Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is all about blue or sometimes pink hydrangeas. This is a blue Hydrangea Macrophylla, or Bigleaf Hydrangeas, as a lot of people call them. This is an old plant here, so I'm guessing this is Nico Blue. This variety I'm holding in my hand is a dually hydrangea. This container is untreated to turn these flowers blue, and so it's pink in this container. That's one of the features of blue hydrangeas, is you can make them pink or blue. They're a little harder to make pink if they're really dark blue, but you can make pink ones into blue ones over time. So I'll talk about that later in the video. So you're gonna see me holding a hydrangea in my hand that has pink flowers on it, but I'm gonna show you some video of some blue ones as well. These big leaf hydrangeas are very cold hardy. They can grow up to zone 5 and then down to zone 9. That's the tricky part on these, is the zone 9 part, because I believe zone 9 in the southeast is probably too hot for these. The horticultural map measures low temperature. It kind of ignores the fact that it may only get down to 40 degrees or 30 degrees in your area, but that same area in California may only get to 80 degrees during the summertime, or 85 degrees during the summertime, and in the southeast it might be 105 or 100 and whatever in the summertime. So that's a definite distinct difference in zone 9, and I think in the southeast these are really going to struggle with the humidity and those really hot afternoon temperatures. Worth a try, but if it struggles, it's probably always going to struggle. I don't think there's a whole lot you can do about it. Most of these big leaf hydrangea cultivars are going to get 4 to 6 feet in height and 4 to 6 feet in width. Pretty easy to control in that 4x4 range. There are some new dwarf cultivars that can be kept smaller than that. If you cut these big leaf hydrangeas back hard, once they're established, they can actually grow pretty quickly. They can grow a foot or more in a single season. Once they reach a certain height, they're kind of self-maintaining. You can see the dead stems on this plant happen like that, and then new pieces replace it. So it kind of maintains, this one's about 4 feet in height, and it's kind of maintaining that on its own. This plant is in absolutely perfect conditions. It is got some dappled shade around it. There's 3 trees right here beside it, but it has a big gap in the canopy directly above it, so it is going to get some direct sun on it during the day. These big leaf hydrangeas will work on foundations. They probably work best on a wall that doesn't have windows, because they can get a little tall to be planted in front of windows. Works really well in a woodland garden as long as it's getting some direct light during the day from either in the early morning or late in the evening. I don't think these make great container plants. They're certainly cold hardy enough to take a root freeze, but they have nutritional requirements and watering requirements, and you'll end up with yellow leaves if you're not getting that just right. Of course, the main feature on these hydrangeas is these blue clusters of flowers, or pink depending on your soil type, that tend to come out in the late spring or early summer depending on the area of the country that you live in. Some of the newer varieties will actually bloom again later in the summer on some new growth. The foliage is actually quite nice on these. This is a plant that I think is getting almost too much early morning shade, so the foliage isn't drying out. Those leaves are wet right now, and you can see some spotting happening on this leaf. I think this will get quite bad on this plant over the course of the summer, but generally speaking, if the foliage can dry out in a reasonable amount of time in the morning, the foliage is actually nice as well. I've included videos in the description of this video for planting woody trees and shrubs depending on your soil type. There's really not much to worry about on these. Planting them, just don't cover anything that's not covered when you purchase it. Don't over mulch it, don't over water it. These big leaf hydrangeas are reasonably drought tolerant once they're established. If you're in an area that gets regular rainfall, if you're not, obviously you're in control of the watering, but in the southeast, especially in the northeast, these really are not going to need a lot of ongoing watering. It's very tempting in the southeast to overwater these. When you come home from work at night, you'll frequently see the leaves will be curled up. It's kind of a defense that they go into when it's too hot in the afternoons. You go back out the next morning and they look perfect. The leaf uncoils at night and it's no problem really. But it's very tempting to get out of your car, drag a water hose over to it and water it just because it looks dry. If you see it curled up like that, do go and check it, but pull the mulch back, put your finger down in the ground, make sure it actually needs water before you actually water it. I would definitely fertilize these hydrangeas in the late winter or early spring as they're coming out of dormancy. with a slow release fertilizer, you can manipulate the soil on these to change the color. And there is a soil acidifier that Espoma makes that is great for turning these blue. You can try to add lime if you want them on more of the pink side. I would encourage you to plant them in the ground and wait a year and see what color they come out before you start working on this, and then use the soil acidifier if you want them bluer in a small amount each year and get it to the shade of blue that you want that way. Same thing with the lime. Add a small amount of lime if you want them pink and try to move them toward pink over time. You can also use aluminum sulfate to make them bluer. I've been told that it's harsh on the plants. We actually use it in the containers at the nursery. That's the tool that we use to produce blue hydrangeas in a container is aluminum sulfate. I've never had a problem with it, but you know, maybe that's the case. I really don't know, but there is a soil acidifier that's a sulfur-based product that you can use to turn them blue. It's probably what I would use, and just do it slowly over time. I would encourage you to plant these big leaf hydrangeas where you can allow them to get some size on them so you're not having to do a lot of pruning on them. If they're in a place that they can get 4 or 5 or 6 feet in height, they're kind of self-maintaining at that height. You'll see some of the old stems will die and new growth will take its place once it reaches that height, and you just take out the dead pieces as it leaves out in the spring and keep it cleaned up that way. If you do have it in a spot where you need to lower it substantially, do your pruning after they flower in the early summer. You've got a very, very short window there where you can get after them pretty hard and still have time to set the flower buds for next year. These things actually have the flower buds on them going into winter. So if you do any winter pruning on them, you're taking flowers off for sure. There are new varieties that we call remontant varieties. They bloom on old and new growth. And I'm sure you've seen some of these being advertised endless summer as an example of that. They'll not only bloom on the flower buds they set the previous year, they'll also put out some growth after they flower and have an additional flowering in midsummer. They are prone to a few chewing insects. Typically just don't worry about it on hydrangeas. The bigger problem is that leaf spot, which I've already shown you on here, if they're not allowed to dry out quick. If you're getting that problem and they're starting to lose any leaves, you definitely want to clean those leaves up from underneath it, especially, and clean up any dead leaves that are under them during the winter time. Don't do a lot of pruning on them, but do clean up after them, because this leaf spot will just bounce right back up off the old foliage onto the new foliage the following spring. Deer absolutely love these big leaf hydrangeas, and if you have deer problems, they'll eat these to the ground. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the blue or pink big leaf hydrangeas. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also comment below with any questions you have about hydrangeas. Thanks for watching.